Before we start today's tale, help the crew by stabbing the subscribe and like buttons. Your support is the wind to our sails. It was a night like no other, and if you think you've heard all my tales, think again. This one begins with a grudge, an old wound left to fester in the heart of a man who once sailed under the king's flag. Sit down, mate. Pour yourself a drink, and let me tell you about Admiral Ryker and the cursed storm he brought down upon me and the Sea Pearl. Years ago, before my name carried any weight on these seas, I was just another captain looking to make a name for himself. The Royal Fleet, led by none other than Admiral Ryker, ruled the waters with an iron fist. Ryker wasn't always an admiral, mind you. Back then, he was a captain, ambitious and ruthless, a man who believed the sea belonged to the crown and no one else. Our first encounter was over a convoy of merchant ships. The crown's ships were bloated with gold and spices, ripe for the taking. I led a daring raid, striking at night, my crew's blades quick and merciless. We left the convoy in shambles, but Ryker wasn't about to let that stand. He pursued us through a narrow channel, cannons roaring, until a clever maneuver left his ship stranded on a reef. It was his humiliation that sealed our fate, his pride turning to a grudge that would last a lifetime. Years passed, and Ryker rose through the ranks, while I became the infamous Captain Edward Morrigan, scourge of the Caribbean. I thought little of the man until whispers began to reach my ears. Tales of a new admiral hunting pirates with a zeal bordering on madness. His fleet was said to be relentless, his tactics brutal, his prisoners few and far between. I should have taken the warnings more seriously, but arrogance is a dangerous thing. One night, while anchored near a small island to resupply, a messenger arrived. A bedraggled sailor, barely alive, delivered Ryker's message. The next time we meet, Morrigan, the sea will run red with your blood. The man collapsed at my feet, a dagger in his back bearing the Royal Fleet's insignia. Ryker was sending a message, loud and clear. The crew grew restless after that. Even old Tom, my first mate, seemed uneasy. "Captain, this Ryker's not like the others," he warned. "He's got the king's blessing and a heart full of vengeance. We'd best steer clear of his waters." But steering clear wasn't my style. The seas were mine, and no admiral, no matter how vengeful, would keep me from my claim. Months later, in a smoky tavern in Port Royal, I came across a map that promised riches beyond imagining. It was an old thing, the parchment brittle and edges burned. It spoke of a treasure hidden in the wreck of an ancient Spanish galleon near the Bermuda Triangle. Gold and jewels, they said, guarded by spirits of the deep. The man who sold it to me swore it was real, though his voice shook as he spoke. "Beware the cursed waters," he warned. Many have gone searching for that wreck, and none have returned. The crew, ever eager for riches, didn't need much convincing. We set sail the next day, the promise of treasure driving away any lingering fear of Ryker's fleet. The journey was fraught with peril from the start. The winds were fickle, the seas rough, as if the ocean itself sought to bar our way. Days turned into weeks, the crew growing restless as the horizon offered no sign of the promised treasure. It was old Tom who finally spotted the wreck, half submerged and encrusted with coral, a haunting silhouette against the setting sun. We anchored nearby, lowering boats to explore the galleon. The air was thick with unease, a silence broken only by the creak of wood and the lapping of waves. As we approached, the temperature seemed to drop, the water growing darker, almost black. "Captain, this place gives me the chills," muttered one of the younger crewmen. "Feels like we're being watched." "Keep your wits about you," I replied, though I felt it too. The weight of unseen eyes, the sensation of something ancient stirring beneath the waves. The wreck was a treasure trove, chests of gold and jewels spilling from its shattered hull. But it wasn't the gold that caught my attention. It was a medallion, half buried in the sand, its surface etched with strange symbols. The moment I touched it, a chill ran through me, and the sea seemed to grow quieter, as if holding its breath. "Captain, that thing ain't natural," old Tom said, his voice low. "Best leave it be." But I could. Something about the medallion drew me in, its weight in my hand feeling heavier than it should. I slipped it into my pocket, a decision I would come to. As we hauled the treasure aboard, the first cannonball struck, tearing through the silence like a thunderclap. Ryker's flagship, the Resolute, loomed on the horizon, its cannons blazing. He'd been waiting, tracking us, using the treasure as bait to draw me out. "Battle stations!" I roared, my voice cutting through the chaos. The crew sprang into action, manning the guns and unfurling the sails. The Sea Pearl was fast, but Ryker's fleet was relentless, a wall of ships cutting off every escape route. The sky darkened as the battle raged, the storm brewing with unnatural speed. Lightning illuminated the carnage, ships ablaze, men shouting and screaming. Through it all, Ryker's voice rang out, a chilling promise of vengeance. "You've eluded justice for too long, Morrigan," he bellowed. Tonight, it ends. The medallion in my pocket seemed to pulse with heat, its power feeding the storm. Waves towered over the ships, the wind howling like a banshee. Ryker's fleet struggled to keep pace, but the Resolute pressed on, its cannons firing relentlessly. Amidst the chaos, I made a desperate decision. "Head for the storm," I ordered, the crew's eyes widening in disbelief. "It's our only chance." The Sea Pearl surged forward, the storm swallowing us whole. The medallion's glow grew brighter, the symbols on its surface shifting, almost alive. Behind us, Ryker's fleet was torn apart, ships vanishing into the waves, their crews' screams lost to the tempest. As the Sea Pearl crested a massive wave, Ryker's flagship loomed beside us, his boarding party swarming onto our deck. The battle was fierce, the air thick with the clash of steel and the smell of gunpowder. I found myself face to face with Ryker, his sword gleaming in the storm's light. "This ends here, Morrigan," he growled, his voice low and menacing. "Aye, it does," I replied, raising my blade. Our duel was brutal, each strike ringing out above the chaos. Ryker was skilled, his movements precise, but he underestimated my desperation. With a final, desperate lunge, I disarmed him, his sword clattering to the deck. "You'll never win," he spat. "The sea will claim you, just as it'll claim me." As Ryker fell, the medallion in my pocket seemed to reach its peak, its glow blinding. The storm paused, the sea growing eerily calm. Then, with a deafening roar, a massive wave rose, carrying the Resolute into the depths. I threw the medallion into the sea, its cursed power vanishing beneath the waves. The storm subsided, leaving only silence and the wreckage of battle. Back in calmer waters, the crew's cheers felt hollow, the weight of Ryker's vengeance still heavy on my mind. The treasure we'd claimed came at too high a price, the lives lost a constant reminder of the sea's cruel balance. So there you have it, mate. Another tale of blood and betrayal, of curses and the high cost of victory. The sea gives, and the sea takes away. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that no treasure is worth the price of a man's soul.